This is part 3 of the lecture on least restrictive environment. We had left off going through the various continuums of placement. And when we talk about determining the placement of a student, schools may not make placement decisions based solely on factors such as category of disability, availability of educational or related services, availability of space, administrative convenience. Now, let's talk about this. When you're a school district and you're trying to make a determination of what is the appropriate educational placement for a particular child, you can't say, first off, the appropriate placement is blank because of the child's disability. You can't just say, because the child has autism, he therefore goes to a special education classroom or he'll go to a special school. You can't say just because of the disability what the actual placement will be. We don't educate children based on disability per se. There are plenty of children with learning disabilities who are in an inclusion classroom. Some are in a special education classroom. Some have resource room. So the disability, the nature of the disability, doesn't drive the decision completely. Second, availability of educational or related services. You can't place a child in an educational program because you have space or you don't have space. We can't say, well, this child needs a resource room, but our resource rooms are full, so therefore we'll put the child in a special education classroom. You obviously can't do that. The child must be educated where it's appropriate for the child, not where we have availability at a given time. Same thing with availability of space. So the whole concept of availability does not apply in any way when schools are making placement decisions for the child. The child has to be educated in the educational environment that is appropriate, not where we have space in our school building. Also, administrative convenience, okay? If it's more convenient for the child to be in the special ed classroom or more convenient for some reason to be in a resource room, again, that does not apply. Schools cannot make placement decisions based on that as well. So you can't make decisions based on the category of the disability by itself, availability in any way, or convenience. And most importantly, the one that comes up very often is about funding. And as you know from this course, funding concerns cannot be used as a reason for not providing appropriate programs or services. If funding is a problem, the school district has to explore other ways of serving the student. So if a child needs a particular type of educational placement, that child must receive that placement. And if funding is a concern, then schools need to figure out a way to get it done. But we can never use insufficient funding as a defense for why a child's educational needs are not being met and why the child is not receiving an appropriate education. Now, once a child is placed in a special education program, whatever that might be, whether the child receives resource room, whether the child's in a special ed classroom, wherever the child is being educated, after the initial placement decision, that decision must be reviewed at least annually, okay? Placement is always addressed at a child's annual review. So just because a child is receiving resource room in the 5th grade, it does not in any way guarantee that that child will receive resource room in the 6th grade, okay? So every year we have to address placement. Placement is a significant concern for parents. It's a significant concern for the school district. And every year we have to go through the child's IEP. We have to go through the goals. We have to go through everything that the child has done and determine what is the appropriate placement for the child next year. So if a child is at a residential facility in the 7th grade, it does not mean that the child is going back to that facility in the 8th grade. Every year we evaluate, and every year at the annual review we determine placement. Now, one of the questions that comes up is, must an IEP meeting occur in order to change a student's placement? And the answer is absolutely. If the change involves a material change in the substance of the program itself, whether that's the nature of the program, the frequency of the placement, the duration of it, anything like that, you have to have an IEP meeting. But on the other hand, as long as it's just a schedule change, like you're changing a child's speech language therapy from Tuesdays to Thursdays, or it's a location change. The child was receiving resource room in room 18 and now it's being moved to room 11. That doesn't involve any substantial or material alteration to the student's IEP supports or services. There's no conflict with any other provisions of the child's free appropriate public education, and therefore you would not need any kind of notification or any kind of parental consent for any type of minor change like that. But when you're talking about a placement change, an educational placement, there must be an IEP meeting in order for that to occur. Now, what about students who need longer school time? In a sense, what about extending the school year? Some children can't do just 10 months. They have to go to school 12 months out of the year. The local school district, the local education agency, must ensure that extended school year services, or ESY, are available if necessary to provide a FAPE, okay? Extended school year services have to be provided when appropriate. An extended school year are special education and related services provided to a child with a disability, according to the IEP, beyond the normal school year and at no cost to parents. So we're talking about kids who need to go to school in July, in August, the kids that need the extended school year because of whatever the disability is or the severity of the disability. And although ESY services are subject to debate, in general, extended school year services are necessary to a free appropriate public education when the benefit a child with a disability gains during the regular school year will be significantly jeopardized if he or she is not provided with an educational program during the summer months. So when we're looking at extended school year services, you have to look and say, if the child doesn't continue with school in those summer months, if that child does not continue with school for an extended period, is it going to jeopardize what he has learned in the process? So who are the candidates for consideration for extended school year services? Well, students with severe multiple disabilities, students who are recommended for home and hospital instruction, whose special ed needs are determined to be highly intensive and who require a high degree of individualized attention and intervention, students whose needs are so severe that they can only be met in a 7-day-a-week residential program, or students who, because of their disabilities, exhibit the need for a 12-month special service and or program provided in a structured learning environment of up to 12 months duration in order to prevent substantial regression. So when you think about who is the candidate for ESY services, it's really those kids where the disabilities are so severe and the needs are so high that if the child stops the education, if we stop the program for 1 or 2 months, we could have significant and substantial regression in the child's learning progress. So what is extended school year in terms of what it's not? Extended school year services is not mandated. It's not a mandated 12-month service for all students with disabilities. ESY is based on a case-by-case basis. It's not required for the convenience of the school or parents and cannot serve as a daycare service. So let's just say both parents work and say, well, we want our child to be in ESY because we have no one to watch our child. That does not qualify for ESY services. ESY is not required or intended to maximize educational opportunities for students with disabilities. All right, we're not looking to maximize the educational program. We're looking to provide what is going to provide the child with educational benefit. ESY is not required solely when a child fails to achieve IEP goals and objectives during the school year. So just because a child doesn't meet his or her goals doesn't mean the child automatically qualifies for ESY services. And ESY is not there to provide a child with education beyond that is prescribed in his or her IEP goals and objectives. So ESY is dealt with on a case-by-case basis. It's not a mandated service. Instead, we look at it as a program for those students who need it to avoid jeopardizing their educational program, jeopardizing their learning, and having substantial regression in their education. This ends the lecture on least restrictive environment and educational placement in special education.